My friend sent me a link to the Woke Content Detector Google Sheet, which is meant to be used as a tool. You can look up a game title to see if it has woke content in it before you buy. If you're not a fan of woke content, you can skip right over it. If you do like woke content, you can purchase the game. And before we go any further, I can't think of anything more snowflakey than that. There's a lot of talk and jokes about the stereotype of the leftist who, whenever they're forced to come up against a topic or something that disagrees with them, they get triggered and they have to shut down and remove themselves from the situation. And this spreadsheet is exactly that stereotype. If you cannot handle the thought of, in a video game, like ones where there's not even like online multiplayer, it's just you in this video game. If you can't handle the thought of coming up against some subject matter that maybe you don't agree with, and that's going to stop you from buying a game, that's some snowflake shit, dude. That's some snowflake shit, dude. That makes you a snowflake. Man up. Be an adult. Except that some dudes like kissing other dudes. And we'll get into this in a minute, but there are games on this list where that part of the subject matter is not even something that you really have to interact with. Like, sometimes it's just the fact that a character's gay and they exist in the game. Like, that's too much for you, really? That's like being afraid that there's a bear in the woods, so like you're not even gonna go outside. Just the fact that it exists is too much for you, bro? Let's start with one of the first ones that my friend sent me, Sid Meier's Civilization 6. It's not recommended because it contains overtly pro-DEI messaging, contains overtly pro-climate action messaging, race-swapped Suleiman, added historically unimportant female leaders, and global warming and carbon capture mechanics. The first thing that stood out to me was the fact that in Civ 6, you can play as a fascist nation, you can wipe out communist nations, and you can win the game. That's a viable winning strategy, actually. Something about being a fascist and being a winner just doesn't feel inherently woke to me. Another thing here that stood out to me was the line, contains historically unimportant female leaders, and that seems kind of subjective. No? For some of these women, just because you don't know them or they're not immediately recognizable historical figures doesn't make them unimportant historical figures. You wouldn't hold this same standard for men. There are people that you wouldn't recognize that have probably had greater historical impacts than most presidents in the modern age. Because you can't name them, does that make them unimportant? Next up on this list is Don't Starve Together. It's a not recommended game, and it says contains overtly pro-LGBTQ+ messaging. The character WX78 is non-binary, uses they/them pronouns, and uses the honorific mix WX78, and was not originally designed to be non-binary, but was changed due to feedback. Who is WX78? A robot. Say what you want about gender, robots don't have them. We can impose a gender onto a robot, but it does not map onto anything. As for the honorific, them being a character, they had to use something to notify as an honorific. I believe mix is what you use in the situation where someone who is non-gendered needs an honorific. Next up is AEW Fight Forever. This game is not recommended and says features multiple LGBTQ+ playable characters. The roster is comprised of real-life wrestlers, some of whom identify as LGBTQ+. That's it. As far as I know, there's no mini-game in AEW Fight Forever where you play as a male wrestler and you have to kiss another male wrestler using QTEs. It simply is the fact that they exist within the confines of the game. A game in which you don't have to choose to play as those characters. You can get your buddies together and boot that game up and never have to see an LGBTQ+ character. You don't even have to see any women. My point is, at the end of the day, this is a game about giving people suplexes and hitting them with barbed wire bats. This isn't a game that's like trying to make some grand message about the LGBTQ+ narrative. It's a wrestling game, and if the existence of gay wrestlers within that game stops you from buying it, you're a snowflake, dude. Next up is Smite. Achilles' lore explicitly describes Patroclus as his lover. There is no explicit confirmation of this in Homer's Iliad. Also, multiple pride flag avatars. I believe that the creators of this list are correct in that there is no explicit confirmation that Patroclus is Achilles' lover in the Iliad. But there's also one other kind of important thing from the Iliad that is not confirmed. Whether or not Achilles was actually a real person. That's right, I hate to break the news to you if you didn't know, but the mythical Achilles, the warrior who was invulnerable aside from his ankles, I don't think that he was actually real. He is just a fictional character, and moreover, the version that exists in Smite is just an interpretation of a fictional character. If you disagree with Smite's interpretation of the character, that's fine, but trying to harken back to the Iliad as if it's some kind of holy book factual basis about the character of Achilles doesn't make any sense. It's like trying to go to someone who has a fan fiction where Harry Potter is gay and saying, hey, Harry Potter's not gay, it doesn't show up anywhere in the book. It's like, no, it doesn't show up anywhere in the book, but this version of Harry Potter that's in this fanfiction is gay. And again, being gay doesn't apply any stat benefits to Achilles' character, it's just the simple fact that Achilles exists and in this story is gay. That's enough for this list to completely disavow it. Check out the list, I think it's some pretty good brain rot material, but here's two quick ones that I wanted to touch on before I leave. This one, Fallout New Vegas, it's considered informational, which is their maybe rating, kind of woke rating. It says, many minor LGBTQ plus NPCs, a possible companion has dialogue options about her experiences as a homosexual. Light social commentary. There's also a mission in that game where you get worn as an oven mitt by a robot. And Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 get the thumbs up, no woke content detected here, despite the fact that the witch is possibly the strongest female character I've ever seen in-game. That's all my thoughts on the matter.